When you look into this law, and the answer is just like, be yourself. No, but actually, though, stick up for yourself, say what you actually feel, make other people uncomfortable if it means your fucking comfort for once. Do it and watch what we, sources, forces, gods, goddesses, whatever you believe in, watch what we give you. The reason I got so excited about it was because I saw it. It was tangible. It was evidence based. And that turns a skeptic into a believer very fast.
You are always attracting energy into your life. The question is, what can you be mindful about attracting? I'm Shannon Bills, mindset mentor, energy healer, and intuitive reader. And today, we're having mindfulness for breakfast. I am so excited to share this episode with you guys. This is my first episode with a guest. And the guest today is a client of mine, a friend of mine, Ryan McCartan. You might know Ryan from Broadway if you're a theater girly like me. Ryan was JD in Heathers. He was Fiyero in Wicked on Broadway. He was Prince Hans in Frozen. He is going back to Broadway this January as Gatsby in The Great Gatsby musical, which, fun fact, he booked that while working with me. The reason I wanted to have Ryan as my first guest is because I actually wanted to make this a solo episode. And originally it was going to be a solo episode on a universal law called the law of compensation, which has become my favorite energetic principle that has really been so impactful for my students. When you can get behind this law of compensation, you really see a lot of transformation start to happen. And so in this episode, you are going to hear Ryan and I talking about skepticism around manifestation. You're going to hear us talking about polarity of internal truth versus external appearance. You're going to hear us talking about discovering abundance through authenticity, which is what the law of compensation has brought out. Authenticity also brings out this inner abundance, not just the external, but the inner joy, inner freedom, inner truth. And it is so freeing to be in that. And that has definitely been Ryan's experience with the law of compensation. So I'm really excited for you to hear all about his journey working with me and the discoveries he had. So let's get to it. I'm so excited, Ryan. I had a little imposter syndrome because you're my first guest that I've ever had. And the thought that came to my mind was, I'm 90% so okay with this and so prepared, and 10% like new energy. This is new energy I'm feeling. And you and I were just talking about imposter syndrome yesterday on our call. And I was just trying to snap my way out of it just to be 110% so grounded and focused just for our time together and our conversation today. And I just heard higher self, who can be very sassy sometimes, come in and be like, let 90% of your magic that is so familiar to you and so comfortable, the element of Zoom, the element of connecting with people, the element of honest, authentic conversations, so easy. Let that 90% of magic outweigh the 10% of the fears that you're feeling. And that's what we're going to do today. Thank you for being here.
Of course. No, I learned from you that the goal of the self-healing journey is not to eliminate or eradicate bad feelings, air quotes for people who aren't watching, but to navigate through them with peace. And yeah, like I welcome that 10%. That
Mhm.
will make this feel like a bit of a tightrope dance, which I think is good. I always tell people that I mentor, like adrenaline can manifest as fear or anxiety, but adrenaline is also what you feel and what your body does to you when it's priming you to do something amazing. And so it can be harnessed in the same way that it can be quote unquote detrimental.
100%. It feels the same in the
Literally,
body.
literally, because
Yeah.
it's the same chemical. Whether you are nervous or exhilarated, it's the same chemical. You're just
Mm.
calling it something different.
100%. Ryan and I have been working together since July. And in my sessions, I take notes, but that first week is so important because I ask Ryan and any student of mine, top of mind, what limiting beliefs are holding you back? And if it's not top of mind, then we go into a meditation and let the subconscious speak. And we did a little bit of that as well. Prepping for our conversation today, only looked at what I wrote in week one And I think it's going to be really interesting because a lot has happened since July. It is now almost end of November. I want to read to you three quotes that I wrote down when we were going off of the theme of limiting beliefs. And maybe they were something you were experiencing that week. Maybe it was something you were experiencing in the past, but it was something that was stored in the body that was coming out in our session. And I was pretty shook reading back these quotes. So here we go. Your relationship with the belief of struggling serves you more than who you're supposed to be. Doing everything your way wasn't valuable enough to pursue.
Mm.
You were willing to not like yourself for others to like you.
Yeah.
I know that is, I don't want to say that's not where you lie now, but it definitely does not hold the weight that it did in July. And I just wanted to hear your real time reflection of listening to those back because those are some pretty heavy thoughts.
Yeah, they weren't thoughts, they were truths. Just to go real deep, obviously you know this already, but I had a drug problem for a long time. And hearing those words feels like an introspective addict trying to quit. And now it sounds like evidence to why I stopped using. In other words, like the itch to use the metaphor, or the itch to, can I swear on your podcast? Am I allowed to swear
Yes, go
on your podcast?
for
The
it.
itch to shit on myself is very much still there, but it's a recovery. Then it was a truth. Then it was like, I was coming to you with those things is, what do I do with this, instead of fleeting, manageable itches, annoyances. July was not that long ago. Like, nothing about the way that I feel now is, again, completely void of those feelings, but is viscerally still in my mind what it felt like to feel that way all the time. And now I feel that way sometimes. And that in and of itself releases so much pressure. It's wild to hear those words because they're familiar, and it was not that long ago.
Hmm. You and I touched upon this yesterday, but I think a lot of times people go into this with the intention of eliminating those thoughts completely. And you
Right.
even mentioned this at the top of our conversation. The goal is to have a dance with it, or like we say, the goal is to have a dialogue with it versus letting it be its own monologue. And I think that's exactly it now. The space that you're in, you allow it to move through you versus just being stuck in what
Right.
is.
Right.
Yeah. I want to read to you something I also wrote down in week one. I think we were going off of what are some of your goals or what are the things that we're trying to call in together. And the first quote I have is, "No one has seen what I am capable of yet. I want to be given an opportunity to show that." That was one. And another one was freedom from fear, freedom from caring so much, freedom from perfectionism, freedom to play, freedom to try and fail, freedom to honor your needs over someone else's. What comes up hearing that?
I mean, what comes up is how fucking good you are at your job. That all has happened. Those opportunities are nigh. They are here. And I think the big thing that comes up hearing those desires, those wishes, is the spectrum of aspirational to actual,
Mm.
right? That at the time that I said those, they were like, God, it would be so nice not only to have these things, but to be the type of person who could take advantage of them. And really, it's more of the latter, to be the type of person who could take advantage of them, because life actually hands you, I believe, hands you a lot of opportunities, big or small, to be who you're supposed to be. And I think it's more about how often we say no, because it's just too scary, or it just costs our ego too much. And saying no to yourself is usually in concert with saying yes to someone else or something else that almost certainly doesn't serve you. And Yeah, my willingness to dislike myself so that others would like me, that I can copy and paste that sentiment onto so many aspects and chapters of my life. And again, it's not like I'm perfect now. It's not like I'm free from that now, but I'm actively working against that now instead of just rolling over to it as I have often done.
And I think that's a big one for most people. This kind of leads me into this next part of why I wanted you to be the first guest and why I wanted this thing to be the theme, the law of compensation.
Mhm.
The law of compensation, it's an energetic principle for anybody listening. It's a universal law. There's 12 of them. And on paper, the energetic principle just states that when you give your pure authenticity to the world, you will be financially blessed in return. And that was never a favorite law of mine. I have done the program that Ryan and I work in. I've done with almost 150 other artists and creatives at this point. So I've given this lesson a lot. I have spoken and taught the universal laws a lot. And the law of compensation hits a lot differently now since working with you, Ryan, because one, I think your excitement even hearing the law, it was like something had clicked for you and you saw it through a more expansive lens than what I typically teach. And when I elaborate on the law of compensation, I see so many people in this world, in every industry. I can totally speak to the entertainment industry, which is what Ryan and I are a part of, working with creatives. So many people are afraid to show up as themselves
Yeah.
for whatever reason, imposter syndrome or fear of failure, fear of rejection. And it's a big one. Then the law of compensation can't compensate when you aren't being 110% yourself. You're actually blocking your own flow. And I think what you and I have really not mastered, because it is a life journey, ongoing journey, but have really digged a lot of beautiful groundwork with is finding your flow and allowing the energy in your body to show you what that flow is, what your yes is, what your no is. And once you discover what your yes is, and I think in your case, it was one of the things was the placement of your voice and how you were singing and how you were showing up for yourself and not mimicking what you think sounds good. These jobs, 2 Broadway shows, started to roll in and being like, "Hello, Ryan. Here are these opportunities we wanna compensate you with. You were discovering your voice, you were discovering your power." I want you to speak to the law of compensation as well, but I think this is a law that so many people have not mastered yet because we allow the ego to dictate what is available to us, but the ego is all lies. It is all lies. And yes, it's there to keep us safe and protect us, but there comes a point where you're sick of that protection and you know that there's more to life. We got to break through it. And look at how you were compensated once you found that flow.
Yeah. I mean, I'm buzzing with 1,000 things to say. And so if I start
Yeah.
pontificating as I'm oft to do, just be like, okay, great, Ryan, let's move on. So I think first and foremost, when you said that you were going through some of the stuff that was said in our first session, I thought that you were going to bring another thing up, which is something that I was thinking of in anticipation of this podcast and uniquely positioned to, before even diving into the law of compensation, address the skeptics. Because I don't know, I'm sure you do remember that when I first sat down with you, what I said was, I don't believe in any of this, but I have done everything else. So if something that on paper feels to me like witchcraft works, then I don't care. Like, I need to just, I need something to work. And you came highly recommended from someone that I deeply trust in my manager, Taylor. And I allowed my skepticism to be there, but I allowed it to be proven wrong. And I think just before going any further, I do want to address anyone who's, what are they talking about? I grew up in an Irish Catholic household and was burdened and bruised by conventional Catholic religion. So I made a choice that it doesn't work for me. But the people who made the choice that it does work for them, it works for. I made a choice, despite my skepticism, that this does work for me, and it does. I remember also a time that we skewed off into talking about placebos. Now, this is hard and fast science, and I don't know if people know this, but this is true. You can look it up. There are placebo surgeries. Like someone somewhere conducted like bone spur surgery in the shoulder, and they did a control where they actually go in and they remove the bone spurs, and then they did placebo surgeries, and the results from the patients are indistinguishable from one another. Dr. Ellen Langer, the mother of mindfulness, as she's called, the first, I believe, female tenured professor of psychology at Harvard, says that psychology will be the most important frontier in medicine in the next 100 years, because what happens in the mind necessarily happens in the body. In other words, if you believe that something is going to work, whether it be a placebo, whether it be some sort of religious effect, spiritual effect, this mindfulness work, what have you, if you believe that it will work, it will. And there are a lot of ways for it to work. And so now I finally come back to the question that you actually asked, which is about compensation. There are so many ways to be rich, and there are so many ways for the universe to enrich you. Simultaneously, there are so many ways to be poor, and there are so many ways for the universe to punish you with poverty. And yes, there can be a poverty of the wallet, but there can be a poverty of the mind, a poverty of the soul, a poverty of relationships, the poverty of loneliness, the poverty of isolation, the poverty of fear. There are so many ways to feel that. As an inherent skeptic, I'm a big logic guy. And I think the reason that I got so excited by the law of compensation is because it was very evidence-based. If what the law of compensation suggests is by being your most authentic self, you will be enriched, and not exclusively or even necessarily in a monetary fashion. The richness of happiness, the richness of love, the richness of freedom, of fearless, of that kind of childlike wonder and innocence that is not lost, but often buried. There are so many ways to be enriched. And so when you look inward at your life and you're like, wow, I'm not rich in any of these ways. I didn't come to you because I was desperate for money, just to be honest. Like I was in a good financial space. I work really hard. I'm not rich by any means. I'm a proud member of the lower middle class, and I'm happy about it. But I was so poor in so many ways. That was evidence. Okay, if this law says that I will be enriched by being myself, authenticity equals enrichment, then clearly I'm not being authentic because I'm so not rich. And it's so funny how enrichment can also feel like loss. And again, I use those air quotes. Like when I started really just unapologetically speaking my mind and being myself, I lost a couple of relationships that at one time felt very important to me. I lost access to certain opportunities that at one time I thought were necessary. These little ways that as an entertainer I had been nickel and diming my way from thing to thing to thing to thing, just wringing myself out fully and completely for someone else's benefit, for someone else's creative benefit, but really not in a way that served my vision or what I wanted. So there was a lot of shedding that felt maybe immediately like loss, or like that poverty, that sort of spiritual poverty that I was talking about. But the resultant levity, freedom, joy, space that I felt, that was immediate compensation, or semi-immediate, because it immediately felt like loss. But right after that, I felt the compensation. And that is addictive. Proof is addictive, because then it's, oh, I can blow this one wide open. And so I think that people maybe feel a little bit like they're being sold snake oil when it's just believe in yourself and all of your dreams will come true. Like, now, while I will fully say that is what happened for me working with you, which is crazy, I think I know I would be just as well off, just as enriched, maybe in other ways, if job opportunities weren't coming my way. Because I've been poor, financially poor. I've been literally homeless. I've lived in my car, showered at the gym. It was not a cute time for me. I managed that just fine. That really deep emotional poverty of denying yourself, that's not sustainable. And I think the law of compensation is like an evidence based protocol through which you can run the state of affairs of your life and get pretty tangible and immediate feedback of, okay, I feel so emotionally or spiritually poor in so many places. I'm not being compensated because I'm not being the person who's supposed to get compensated. And I have to change that. I have to do something about that. And then when you look into this law, and the answer is just like, be yourself. No, but actually, though, stick up for yourself. Say what you actually feel. Make other people uncomfortable if it means your fucking comfort for once. Do it and watch what we, sources, forces, gods, goddesses, whatever you believe in, watch what we give you. I think, yeah, I think the reason I got so excited about it was because I saw it. It was tangible. It was evidence based. And that turns a skeptic into a believer very fast.
And I think that it's not just what you saw, it's what you felt. I it's something that was coming up when you were talking. I hear it all the time. I work with a ton of different artists, creatives, whether they're writers, actors, agents, managers. And I would say at least once a week, I am hearing somebody comparing themselves to somebody they are perceiving as they have everything. They're
Mm.
winning at life. Why are they booking everything?
Mm-hmm.
And I also work with the people that are booking everything. And they are some of the most unhappy, sad, loneliest people ever.
Mm-hmm.
And this law syncs that up. At no matter what level you're at externally, it's bullshit. It's useless. It doesn't even matter what's in front of you. You hit the nail on the head. Like you could have all the money in the world or all the jobs in the world. It's the internal truth that
Mm-hmm.
feels the best when you are speaking your mind and always going with your own internal compass and flow. It might not make sense, and I think that's what's hard on a growth journey is sometimes you have to be willing to have haters and lose friends and lose family, but the internal feeling and power of, hey guys, no barriers inside my mind, my body, my energy, like that is priceless and does become addictive.
And the acknowledgement, because once you embody this principle as a law, and once you see everything through the lens of compensation, either compensation or lack thereof, okay, I feel like I am finally, genuinely being myself, and my quote unquote best friend in the world now does not like me. Okay, very easy to think of that immediately as a loss. That is compensation.
Yes.
You are being
Yes.
compensated with distance from someone that is bad for you. It is not hard to support someone's authentic self. If someone's unwilling to do that, distance from them is compensation. It's that two negatives equal a positive thing. Like minus bad equals plus. That is compensation. That is a gift. And so then you have to be honest with yourself. It takes being self-critical and being like analytical of oneself to do the honest work of, okay, am I actually being authentic? But if you can really get behind the fact that the answer to that is yes, if they don't fuck with you, then that information, okay, these all of these people that I thought were my friends don't like the true me, that's compensation. Oh my god, I don't have to bend myself into these insane and unsustainable shapes to make them happy. I just get to stop doing that. I am now compensated with all of that space, freedom and energy to spend either on myself or on people who can do the very easy work of loving me as I am. That level for me of, oh, loss is now compensation.
Yeah.
That's that was a whole mind fuck in and of itself that I think accelerated my love for this law and my like willingness to perpetually apply it.
And what happened after understanding this law? And this is like in true, I think, universe giving you what you want fashion, presented you an option to, I'll just say, when you booked Sondheim's Old Friends. That, in a way, was comfort and safety.
Mm-hmm.
And also, option one, stay with old Ryan. And then in comes, not even a few weeks later, boom, Gatsby and Gatsby, which is not comfort and safety. It is uncomfortable and uncertain in so many ways. Option two is continue to lean into law of compensation and be with this new version of Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that polarity.
Yeah. So just for context for people that don't know, and again, unbelievably fortunate for this to be the case. I found myself in a position where I had to pick between two jobs, and one was an amazing job that I'm actually very sad to have had to walk away from, which was a review of Sondheim's work coming to Broadway. And I don't mean this shady at all, but just I think it's a very illustrative way of putting it. My character's name would have been Man 12
Mm-hmm.
versus playing Jay Gatsby in The Great Gatsby in A Beautiful Machine or the title role of a glitzy, glammy, hard musical. And because it's a podcast that only has a certain amount of minutes, I'm going to glaze over like an immensely stressful, painstaking, soul searching, because it was a very hard decision to make. What ended up being the sticking point for me was, and I actually said this in an interview recently, I did not pursue Gatsby. I was dragged into Gatsby kicking and screaming. When I got the call that there was interest for me to play the role, I laughed. I was just like, there's no way. And that was true. There is no way for me to play a role like Gatsby if I do it the way I've been doing it, which is inauthentic. The way that I have been singing for a very long time is listening to what I think is maybe going to be wanted and then trying to emulate a version of that sound. That's been the way that I've been singing since I was 16. And I remember the very turning point moment come from a very vibrant theater community in Minnesota, and in very like glee fashion it was like always between me and this other guy in the theater program there, and he has just the most gorgeous instrument, very different than mine, like loud and this huge like almost operatic sound, and we were very much pit against each other. And what I took away from that is, for you to be successful, you have to sound like this, which sort of turned into, for most of my career, for you to be successful, you have to sound like X. And you can replace X with, okay, you're gonna be Fiyero in Wicked. Listen to how Norbert Leo Butz did it, sing like that. Okay, you're going to be Hans in Frozen. Listen to how the original Hans did it, sing like that. Whether it be the movie or the original Broadway company, I had two albums to obsess over and freak out about. And again, this sort of vocal pantomime, this folding myself into these shapes to fit an anticipated need that was never actually directly asked of me, but that I was just so insecure about showing up as me that I vocally showed up as other people, thinking that's what was wanted. To do a role like Gatsby 8 times a week that way is plainly and necessarily impossible. And now, to be frank, there's just significantly less singing for me to do in Stephen Sondheim's Old Friends. It's not impossible for me to do an impression of what I think a Sondheim singer is going to sound like and just do my four little moments, and it'll hurt and I'll be tired, but I can bend myself into a shape and sustain it over there. So I was compensated with an opportunity, with a choice. Stay inauthentic and be man 12, or be Jay Gatsby in The Great Gatsby, but only if you do it your way. Because the only way I can sing that material without absolutely exhausting myself is forcing, again, sometimes dragging myself kicking and screaming towards my authentic voice. It is the only way I can sing it 8 times a week, is if I do it the authentic way. My voice does what my voice does. It doesn't do what anyone else's voice does. Everyone else can do everything that I can't do. That is a fact. No one can do what I can do. That is also a fact. The reason that choice was so clear and was in its way compensation is because I have been on this journey of authenticity, and I was given a choice of you can do the inauthentic thing and fake your way through this, or we have this amazing opportunity that you will literally only succeed at if you do it your way. I still, at the time of filming this podcast, I haven't officially started rehearsal. I'm drilling the material, but I haven't officially started the rehearsal in any capacity. And I still feel sometimes like I'm dragging myself kicking and screaming to my private rehearsal process, because sometimes I don't want to. Sometimes I don't want to do it the authentic way, because then the authentic way, if people say shitty things about me in the TikTok comments, but I'm doing it a Jeremy Jordan impression, then it doesn't necessarily hurt as bad than when people will probably and absolutely, because that's the law of polarity, which is not what this is about, but there have to be people who are going to shit on my performance. And when they shit on the performance and it's my authentic voice, that'll hurt more because it's actually me. I'm so much more exposed. I'm so much more vulnerable doing it my way. But I'm not more exposed or more vulnerable doing it authentically than I am continuing to live my life as anyone other than me. And weighing that pain out, how many more years are you going to be someone else for everyone else's benefit? How many more years, how many more shows, how many more opportunities do you let go by to satiate the fear? Enough was enough. And I would so much rather be myself terrified than be comfortable as someone else, because I'll never be comfortable as someone else.
Period. I think we mentioned this on our call yesterday of it. The name of the game is allowing the uncertainty and uncomfortableness to be comfortable. Because if you are somebody that is growth minded and has these big goals and big desires and big dreams for yourself, you have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, because it's never going to feel 100% natural. Even coming into this podcast, I still had the 10% jitters. And now guess what? It's
Me
behind
too,
me.
by the way.
I
Like, because, oh God, I'm the first guest. What if I say something stupid? What if this goes out there and people are like, oh, I was a fan of his, but now that I know that he's this dumb shit, new wave, spiritual girly. My favorite quotes I've ever heard is that anxiety is just believing conspiracy theories about your own life. Like, it never goes away. And it's never going to go away. And again, that can be viewed as imprisoning or freeing, because it's okay, fine. If it's always going to be there, then I can be like, oh, hi, nice to see you again. It's like an asshole neighbor. Okay, my rent is so fucking good and I love my apartment and I have an asshole neighbor and I know he's going to be there and I know he's going to turn his music on at this time. And if I can just tolerate that and maybe, dare I say, even invite him over every once in a while for the barbecue, I get to have this fucking palace, this dream apartment. You can fight, fight, and fight, and fight, and fight, and fight, but it's never going to go anywhere. It will win. If you stoop down to its level, it's going to beat you with its experience. So you accept it or it drags you down. And some people come to that conclusion very early in their life, and God bless them. For me, another thing I was dragged kicking and screaming into, it was like, okay, I have burdened myself with this fight for too long, and I don't care what method I need to use to achieve peace. Peace is a non-negotiable for me now. Whether you arrive at that conclusion on your own terms or whether, as I've said 1,000 times in this podcast, you are dragged kicking and screaming into it, I think eventually everyone comes to a turning point where it's like, how much more of this can I literally tolerate? And then you even become grateful for the struggle. Okay, even the struggle was compensating, because now here I am, finally pushed to the brink where I have no other choice but to feel and explore and uh, find and make manifest in my life that peace. And
Mhm.
without this struggle, without this just constant inner chatter, I probably never would have pursued it. And then my life would have been so much worse off for so much longer.
You bringing up that point, it's really powerful. I don't think people realize that if life were fine and dandy and always going right, you wouldn't know how to feel grateful because you'd have no polarity to compare it against.
Exactly.
And if you look back, every single painful moment in your life, even if it was just this internal battle, which is probably the most painful of all of it, that is the fuel to get you to grow. There'd be no fuel if there was no painful moment. We'd be
Right.
staying the same.
Right.
I wanna wrap this up, and my last final question to you, it's been a few years, not since you've been on a stage. I know I've saw you on a stage only a couple months ago in LA, but Broadway, it's been a couple of years. Looking back at that version of Ryan versus this version of Ryan, what is this version of Ryan that you I don't even wanna say hope people will see and feel from you. I wanna make it about you because who cares what we see and feel? I wanna know what you are gonna see and feel on the stage.
Yeah, that's the answer. Like, I don't know and I never will know, and it will look different every day. But performing for me has felt for so long, and now I'm getting to the point where I'm able to say for too long, like this sort of absurdist experience of floating over myself and playing this like playing the role of this very negative seer, predicting what all the people are saying and thinking and feeling, and also of a critic of myself. That wasn't good. That wasn't good. Very unfree, very unfree, and very safe. Ironically, want this to feel safe, and I'm probably going to kick myself later down the road for saying that and for manifesting that and for wanting that because that's scary. But I want it to be dangerous. I want it to be so present that I can't fully say I know how this is going to go because I'm alive in it. Instead of floating above myself and watching it, I want to be in it. Unfree and safe? No, I want dangerous and free. No one with good reviews, bad reviews, or any reviews in the middle, no one will know that. No one will feel that. That's not for anyone. That is for me. My friend, the effervescent and brilliant Laverne Cox, taught me you can't pour from an empty cup. You must fill your cup, and then the overflow is for everyone else. I have been out on that stage with an empty cup, holding it out to the audience like a beggar. And what this experience must be for me is a constant overflowing from my full cup. And that can and will only come from that authenticity that we talked about, that danger that I just mentioned, and ultimately that freedom.
I'm here for it. I think everyone is here for it. To me, I don't wanna just say because I'm, like, susceptible to tapping into people's energies and feeling it, but I think everyone is an energy reader to some extent,
Yeah.
and I think we are gonna feel this whole new version of you, this freer version of you, and I'm really excited to see how it's compensated.
Yeah. Wow. Amen. Not,
Wow.
wow. You really wrapped it all up
That's
there.
it.
Period.
Period. Thank you, Ryan.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.